Hey everyone, this is Jonas Milenworks again, back with another go at putting my engine together. This time around I will take you through how the cylinder heads are torqued down onto the engine, how to clean out and select the rockers and why I picked the rockers I did, and bring us to this state of the engine. This episode takes off where the last episode left off. We did, in the last time around, put the cylinder heads together, and they look like this right now. I did leave them with some alcohol just sitting in the combustion chambers, these three, to let it soak there for a while and see if the level went down. They seem to be completely tight, all three of them, so that's good. There is now more than one way to put the cylinder heads back on the engine. The most traditional way is, of course, just taking the cylinder heads and then just bolting them on to the engine, right? Very straightforward. The other way is taking the cylinder heads, bolting them together with the cam towers, so this becomes one big unit, and then putting that big unit on top of the engine, right? It doesn't really matter which one you do, at least in my experience. The important thing is that you tighten these down together once you have this one assembled. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to put the heads on top of the engine. And here we are, next to an engine that is very eager to see its cylinder heads. In one of the last, or one of the previous episodes, we did put the new pistons and barrels on this guy. So this one should be ready to go. Looking at it, I wish I stripped it down completely and vapor blasted the whole thing, but that would have been quite a lot more work, and I know that the core of the engine is good. The task now is to really just seat the three heads here. I don't want to tighten them now, I just want to seat them. And the reason I don't want to tighten them here one by one is this air-cooled engine is particular in the sense that it's really 6 individual cylinder banks that all are identical, but they're not one piece. That means they can actually move a little bit in relation to each other. And when we look at the cylinder heads, if you look at this one, you see that this one actually has guide pins up here and down here. These guide up to the cam tower that sits here on the top. So what happens if I just take this one and I tighten it down completely? And what if I do that and it's just a little bit offset? Well, then it's going to be really difficult to get the cam tower on. So I'm using this as my assembly rig. I'm going to put the heads and just seat them there. Then I'm going to put the cam tower, and I'm going to tighten the cam tower with the heads, and then I'm going to tighten the cylinder heads down to the engine. Important that you do it like that. If I tighten them one by one, the chance is that this is not going to fit perfectly, and I'm going to be very disappointed having to loosen the cylinder head nuts. I'm going to put the little seal. So there's several different kinds of seals here. I'm just using an original seal, which is a steel gasket kind there. It's not honestly the very best seal you can have. There are these really nice copper aftermarket seals that you can use there. But to use those, you have to machine the cylinders and machine the heads to get one to accept the others, and I don't want to do that. So cylinder head, I am using to be able to get the bolts down there in the best possible manner. I'm using something called OKS 250. This is just a thread lubricant. I'm putting just a little bit of this on all the threads, so that as I later on torque the cylinder heads down, the threads are lubricated so that I don't lose the friction in or lose the torque in the friction on the thread. So that's a good little tip to do that. So seal is there, cylinder head goes on. It seats perfectly. Yeah, really good. I take the nuts and I'm just gonna assemble the nuts. In my build, I used the 993 Turbo cylinder head studs. So these are the ones that are threaded all the way. They're also called Dillavar studs for some of you that has been reading. This one together with the other aftermarket like the ARP studs, they're supposed to be the best ones, and they're supposed to be made in a way that you can reuse them. If you disassemble your engine, you can assemble it without changing the studs. That's supposedly be the case. I believe them when they tell me that is the case. And they're also supposed to be the best ones for the air-cooled engines. So the task now is not to tighten these. I'm just seating them so that if they do need to move just a little pinch up, down, left or right, then they can as I put the cam tower. So I'm just going to leave it like that. Time to go to the second one. And by the way, these little cylinder holders that I 3D printed, they did work really well. They are on my homepage for free if anyone is interested in not paying the expensive dollars that you otherwise could pay to buy the proper machine ones. The proper ones are good though, so there's no foul in paying a little bit of money for those, of course. But anyway, these did work really well, so knock yourself out if you like them. Okay, so all the 3 cylinder heads are just seated there. I didn't use any torque at all to put them down there. Now that the cam tower comes here, I need to seal off here. I need to seal that off nicely before I move ahead. And as if any one of these need to just move a little bit, then that's not going to be an issue. They still can. Because I've only seated them, and once all of this is tightened together, then I'm going to torque these, right? Let's go look at the cam towers. And it's time to get to this episode's craziness, and that comes to the cam towers and why I'm going to change this concept around for my Porsche 964 engine into using 993 cam housings, right? This might feel like a strange thing to do, to Frankenstein a Porsche 964 engine, to go from this part number on the cam houses, which is obviously 964, to this Frankenstein idea of putting 993 cam housings onto it. It has some really good reasoning behind it though. And I'm going to explain this in the sense of oil leakage and in the sense of performance of the rockers. Okay, so I'm going to try to explain the sealing concept and why I believe that all of these 964 engines are leaking, or actually why my Porsche 964 engine was leaking. So this, of course, here is the inside of the engine, right? That makes sense, right? That means the outside of the engine is here. The outside of the engine is here and here, so we want to keep the oil on the inside here, obviously. And this cover, it sits like this, and it makes sure that this is the outside of the engine now. This is pretty obvious, all of these things, right? This one is sealed off with a molded gasket here, or molded rubber seal, and this is good. This is good, it works well. It works well until these guys warp, because this magnesium that these are made of, they warp after a while, and then you get muddy, oily puddles in your garage. The thing that is really not so good in this design is the way that the rockers are sealed. So this is the rocker arm, right? So it rides the cam on this side, and here's the elephant foot that pushes down on the valve. This is obviously supposed to be on the inside of the engine. And this guy runs on a rocker shaft. Right? Nothing strange with that. However, you would expect that all of this is supposed to be on the inside of the engine. It's not. Actually, this is the outside of the engine. You can see that it's a little bit corroded because it's been on the outside of the engine, right? And that is because the rocker arm sits here. Come on. And then this shaft sits through like that. So here goes the rocker arm. It sits there, goes up and down, and this is now the outside of the engine. And this here is also the outside of the engine. So now you have, for each rocker arm, you have a sealing towards the outside of the engine here, and you have a sealing to the outside of the engine there. So that means just this compartment here, how many places is it exposed to the outside? Well, the big seal here, so that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then we have between the heads and the engine 3 more. So 10 different places do you have a sealing perimeter on this compartment alone. 10 places. In the 993, they obviously put a little bit of more thought into this. And as you can see, the area here looks completely different. We still have a cover. The covers are now made out of plastic, right? And the cover, this plastic does not warp. It is lighter, and it sits still with a seal just like before. But this cover now keeps tight because it doesn't warp like the magnesium did. So this is the first improvement, both on weight, I would say looks, and also in terms of how it seals. Then we look at the rocker arms. They look like this. So I have aftermarket rocker arms. These are from Pauter. This is really good dynamite. They are lighter, they are stronger, and they're more beautiful. So these arms, they sit on a shaft that, as you can see, looks completely different. And this shaft, believe it or not, is completely on the inside of the engine. So we counted 10 different perimeters on the 964 compared to the inside of the engine and the outside of the engine. And this engine we have 1, right? None of these are exposed to the outside, so these cannot possibly leak because it's the inside of the engine. Then we have there, and there, and that's where it just connects to the head. So, and in life, we do find ourselves in situations where less is more. This is one of them. 4 different places where it can leak on. 10 different places it can leak on. So this is something that obviously they figured out that it wasn't very good the way they had done it previously. So now they changed it to this. This, however, has been working for a very, very long time. So this is not bad. It's just difficult to get it right. And this, I would say, is not very difficult to get it right. That's one of the reasons I wanted to go for the 993 cam housings. I was tired of this. The other aspect of why the concept of the 993 is better is the oiling of the rockers. So when we look at the rockers for the 964, they sit like this. And we can see that this one is just a plain shaft, right? And usually in the engines I've disassembled, you can take them out and you can see that they're worn on one side and not the other side. And that's because they get pushed in one direction, right? The oil concept of this is also not very ingenious. It is a little hole there, right? So as oil is flying around in this cam housing, this hole will get a little bit full and this one goes back and forth, and that is supposed to circulate around this shaft, right? That's all what this oil concept is, right? In the 993, the rocker shafts, they have a little slot like this, right? And you see there's a little hole there, right? And that hole goes out to a hole there. And then when you look at this one here, there is no hole in this one, right? You can see that there's a little groove in there, and this is to distribute the oil. And actually what this system has, if we go over and look at the cam housing, You see, there's a little hole there. And this hole is connected to an oil channel that goes through here, or 2 oil channels, one for the exhaust valves and one for the intake valves. And then this is then connected to the rest of the oil gallery in the cam housings. So as soon as your oil pump is running, it's shooting oil through there, making sure that you really have perfect lubrication through there. I think this is honestly not only related to the lubrication of the shafts, because they did have hydraulic lifters on the 993, which I will not have. I will have mechanic lifters. And I think that oil channel concept had something to do with pushing oil down to the hydraulic lifters. But anyway, it's a better oil concept and something that I really like. So 993 cam housings makes a perfect Frankenstein baby and is the right thing for my build. And what would this be without me scoring these two, figuring out which is the lightest, which is the most purpose-oriented for this lightweight build. What I put together here is the old 964 setup with the covers, all the nuts, all the washers, everything all in, seals, gaskets, whatnot. 7 kilos, all of this. Then I have the new setup, which is here. With all of the goodies, all of the rockers, the Pauter rockers, the plastic covers, and all what that means. And this is 6.5. So, half a kilo on left bank, half a kilo on right bank means I've saved 1 kilo. And it might also be the most expensive kilo I have ever invested in this car. Nevertheless, I didn't do it for the weight. But the weight is there and I have saved my 1 kilo. Let's get back to the build. Okay, so before we put the cam housing on top of the engine, we need to make sure that it's squeaky clean. I did do the good thing of water blasting this. So I sent this off to a guy that has this machine that blasts this with water, so it looks really nice. The bad thing was that he used glass as an additive in the water, and I can see that I have residues of this glass all over this. So I'm really worried about this, because now I'm not gonna only splash the camshafts with this, I'm gonna inject this into the shafts on the rocker arms. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna drill out the plugs here on these channels. I'm gonna try to rinse it out as much as I can. Up here the plug is already taken out, so that's good. And let's see how we go about that. So these plugs are at the end of the channels. They just sit there by compression. So I'm making just a little mark in the top of them, trying to center it as much as I can so that I can drill it out. And then after I drill the hole, I will make a thread in there. I have 2 little washers there and two little nuts and a washer, M5 bolt. Get it reasonably centered like that. And then we see if we can pull the plug out like this. I think so. So that was a little bit of a mess. It looks like the method I developed though was really good. I'm not sure, I don't think you'll be able to see down the channels here, but they look really bad. And those are the most critical ones, because those are the ones that push the oil up on the shafts on the rockers. And if you get something in there, there's no way out other than through the bearings. Everything else is kind of splashing oil around, and there's a good chance that it just passes by. But those ones, really bad. So I got them open. I'm gonna flush them out, put it in the ultrasonic for a few hours, turn it around, different angles and so on, and then it goes onto the engine. And we are back at the engine. It took a while. There's quite a lot of prep work to do before you get to this phase here. As I came back, I realized that I had forgot 2 things. I have forgotten this before, but this time I caught it pretty early. One thing is that before you put the heads on, you have to put this air deflector plate on. I'm saying this, and I'm very serious. Please make sure you do this before you put the heads on. So since I hadn't tightened the heads, I just took them off and I put this in. It sits here under and it helps deflect the air so that it actually goes in the right place and cools the engine in the way it's supposed to. Without this, I guess the engine is going to run hot, and you have to put it on before you put the heads on. So a little bit of work there. Another little thing that you need to put in before you do anything is the little bracket that sits here on the top. And that bracket sits there to hold your NOx sensor, right? Two important things that you should do before you get to the next step. And the next step here is to take this baby and put it on top of the engine, right? So it will go just like that, and I will just bolt it down. What I have to do before I can really bolt this down is to put the liquid gasket in there. The liquid gasket is something that looks like this. This one's called Loctite 574. There is more than one. This one is used in this area here in between the cylinder heads and the cam housings. It's also used in the crankcase halves to get those together, and in modern engines this kind of liquid seals is used in many different places. It's really good actually. So I'm going to take this, I'm going to put a little bit of this around the valves here, down here, and in this compartment, and as soon as I've got that done, I'm going to get this housing on and we close this shaft. I don't know if there is a particular science to this. If there is, then it's something that I don't know. I will just smear it out here. Make sure I pick up every little part of this. Okay, I think I've managed to distribute this evenly enough. It's very easy to get too much. I'm not sure it is actually very easy. I don't think it is very easy to get too little. On the contrary, I think everyone typically just gets a little bit paranoid with not covering all the places, so you just bang on there. So it sits there. I'm going to use the nuts to pull this one down now. So I put a few of the nuts in there. Let's see if this is enough to get this guy to move. Seat them first. And here's the thing, if you didn't do it in this sequence, if you started with tightening the cylinder heads first, then you probably wouldn't be able to seat this one. Okay, so it's tightened down now. I did take some of the sealant off before I applied it. It looks like it was still too much, right? You see it's mushroomed out a bit there, a little bit here. So it was just a little bit too much. Not crazy much, but just a little bit too much. And here we go. Time to torque down the cylinder head nuts. More than one way of doing this. There's a lot of black magic going around with exactly how to get this done. The key trick with all of these methods is to get the pins, the bolts, to stretch so that they get a certain tension on the cylinder heads down towards the engine, right? That's the key with everything. And then you have different sequences and so on. One method that I found that I like a lot is torque all of them down to a certain torque measure first, and then untighten them, and then tighten them down again a little bit. So what that means is you kind of seat everything very nicely, and then you run with an angle. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to run all of them with 25 Newton meters, let it sit a little bit, then untighten them, and then just seat them and run 120 degrees. And I'm going to start from the center head here. Get this one down to 25. So the purpose with this first step of tightening it and then loosening it is really just to get a perfect seating in there. Also make sure that the nuts move on the threads. And then after that, it's just a matter of releasing them very gently, quickly, and then tightening them again using an angle. Okay, there we go. I have everything ready. This one is set. I can't remember exactly how much force this is. I've preset this one to 50 Newton meters, so it will tell me if I'm doing something really crazy. I'm using 120 degrees now, which is 30 degrees more than what you will find in the textbook. The reason for that is that I've seated it, released it, just seated it very, very gently with just a little bit of torque, and that's where you find the 30 degrees. But I like this method, I think it makes sense. So there is 120 degrees. Let's see. Okay, here it goes. So it is between 40 and 50, roughly there. It's about 50. There we go. So I think I got it just about to where it needs to be. There's a very good test you do once you've gotten this far, and that is to take this guy, namely the camshaft. Take this guy and you actually assemble it. If this guy now turns freely, that means you have succeeded. If it doesn't turn freely, you are in trouble, and you have to untighten everything and tighten it back in a different order and see if that helps. With this method that I use with seating it and unseating it should eliminate any risk of that happening. So I'm gonna just put a little bit of assembly lube in these channels here and on the camshaft so that this guy doesn't run dry as it turns its first turns later on. So I'm using this red assembly lube that seems to be very popular. Push the camshaft through. And this is always a little bit scary. Turns pretty nicely, doesn't it? So what this means is that we have managed to get this to seat properly. We haven't gotten it down in an awkward position where one of the journals is pushing down more than the other one. And this means that this set or this piece of it is completely said and done. So for those of you that have assembled these engines before, you must have thought it very amusing or found it very amusing that I put the engine together without installing these, the return pipes that go between the two cam housings that takes the oil back into the engine. Because these, you can't get in there after you put this down. So I have very quickly taken everything apart again and put it back together to get these pipes in there. Yeah, a real pity that I forgot those. It's fixed now, and it is the second time I forget this, so I seem to be really good at forgetting things. Nevertheless, this part of the engine is put together. I did gently just put in the rockers, make sure that everything fits. It does. I might have to take those apart as I connect the camshaft on this side, but nevertheless, it's done. It went well. It took a lot of time. And the thing that took so long time was actually cleaning this piece and getting that okay. Yeah, if you like what you saw, you need to subscribe to my channel and comment and like and push all these buttons down there. That makes me very happy. If not, you should write me a comment anyway. I will next time continue on doing the valve lash, doing the cam timing. The other side needs to be built as well, of course, but I'll do that in my own time. And if not, I will see you next time.